What's up, guys? Matt Modi here, and we're going to talk about the 2025 NFL season. And for this video specifically, I'm going to give you my favorite upset predictions for week one of the NFL season. Basically, what we're doing here, finding 2 to 3 moneyline underdog plays a week and just trying to win roughly 50%. You do that, and you're going to make some money. For week one this year, I'm going to have 2 upset predictions for you guys to lock in. Now, last year, I'm just recapping everything. I will admit, I'm mostly going to have player props this year. I'm not going to do a ton of mainline plays like this, but at least for week one, might as well get some upset predictions out there. Really successful regular season last year, up over 40 units, up like 18% ROI. Really good year last year. Hopefully we can continue that this year. What to expect from this channel if you're new. Mostly, again, player props. What I like to do is find plus money banger player props and then ladder them up. So let's pretend a player's receiving yards prop is at 45.5. I'm going to take him 50, 60, 70, 80 yards, just scale down the unit size. It worked really well last year. Let's hope it can work really well again this year. So I would appreciate it if you could like the video, if you could comment, if you could subscribe. And let's get into it. So our first play, we already talked about it. I might as well just start with this one. It's the Giants money line. I took them. If you watch my early bets for the NFL video, I took the Giants spread. Might as well take it one step further, put a half unit on their money line as well. Take the Giants to win straight up. This might seem a little bit silly because the Giants have been terrible for basically the last decade, and the Commanders made it to the NFC Championship last year. But I mentioned this in that video. There are 2 teams that I really want to fade heading into this season. One of them is the Commanders. So I will admit, I think that the Giants defense is going to be good. You know, in the last video, I said it was going to be decent, and that wasn't good enough for some people. They're going to have a good defense, a really good defensive line. Jackson Dart, I will admit, is looking better than I thought. Granted, he's not going to start in week one. It's going to be Russ. Regardless, I don't think the Giants are going to be good. This is more so a play fading the Commanders. And one of my strongest takes heading into this year is that the Commanders are a team that I want to fade. Everybody's in love with them because they got a young quarterback in Jaden Daniels. They made it all the way to the NFC Championship game in his rookie year. They beat the Lions in Detroit. I get it. Jaden is awesome. I don't have a single negative thing to say about Jaden. He's very good. What I do have a negative thing to say about is the Commanders. And again, this is going to sound very familiar if you did watch that video. So if you did, my apologies. But the Commanders, I just think did one of like the dumbest thing a team can do when they have a stud quarterback on a rookie deal. What you're supposed to do is load up around that quarterback. This is the best advantage in sports, is having a rookie quarterback, or excuse me, a good quarterback on a rookie deal. Surround them with really good wide receivers, really good offensive line, which they did kind of do. They drafted an offensive lineman and they traded for Laremy Tunsil. I don't think Laremy Tunsil is going to be that great. He wasn't that great last year, and the Texans had one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. Or sign a really good defensive player. Do something to take advantage of the salary cap space that you now have. And that's not what they did. And we've seen a ton of teams do this in the past. Look at the Eagles with Jalen Hurts. They had him on a rookie deal. They traded for A.J. Brown. They put an awesome team around him. Look at what the Eagles did back with Carson Wentz. They signed Alshon Jeffrey. They signed Torrey Smith. They just did a bunch of things to surround that quarterback with a bunch of weapons. The Texans did it last year with C.J. Stroud. Now, that did not have the same level of success as the Eagles did, but they at least tried to do something. They had 2 good receivers. Guess what? They brought in Diggs to an already good defense. Look at what the Bears did. They surrounded Caleb with a ton of receiving talent, and it didn't work out, obviously, for Caleb last year, but this year they signed the hottest head coaching candidate on the market, and they said, all right, if this doesn't work out, then at least we know it's not Caleb. The Commanders have an awesome quarterback, did what I think is really dumb, signed a bunch of incredibly old players in the offseason. They have by far, without a doubt, the most players above 30 in the entire NFL. They have 31. And that includes the addition of Von Miller. The next closest team has 19. They're like 12 more players above 30 than the next closest team in the NFL. And yeah, they were good last year, but there's plenty of examples of just 1 year and a player that is aged just losing their ability. And the Commanders surrounded their team. They don't have really any good young players aside from Jaden. I mean, Terry McLaurin is their best player, and they refused to pay him. And you look at the Commanders' year last year, they were definitely good, so I'm not going to pretend to say anything otherwise. They also are just due for some regression in one-score games and relatively lucky wins. I mean, obviously, we remember the Hail Mary. That was the luckiest win in like the entire NFL. But They benefited from a win against the Saints where the Saints could have won on a 2-point conversion. They benefited from a win against the Falcons, stuff like that, the last game of the year against the Cowboys. And another thing, their offense had a lot of unsustainable success on fourth down. Again, I'm not saying that Jaden Daniels is going to be bad, but they converted 20 of 23 fourth down conversions last year. When you go for it on fourth down, that's a high leverage play. That can go from 0 points to 7 points very quickly. And obviously that's really, really important. That is the highest conversion rate of a fourth down than any team in NFL history on at least 15 attempts. So even when you look at the best numbers, the best offenses in NFL history, none of them were better on fourth down than the Commanders last year. So as good as Jaden is, that number is going to come down, which just means that they're not going to score as many points. And when you look at last year, their defense was legitimately not good. They did not have a good defense. The success that the Commanders had was because of their offense. And the Commanders didn't really add anybody on defense to make themselves better. They had the 23rd ranked defensive DVOA last year. And you look at their roster, there's not that much encouraging. Their projected starting defensive line did not have a single player that recorded 5 or more sacks last year. Their secondary has a good young player in Mike Sanderstill. So him and Jaden are the two good young players on the Commanders. Marshawn Lattimore, he's washed. The other cornerback spot is either going to be a rookie, so he could be good, or an aged veteran who's not that good. That was their defense. Their run defense specifically, 26th ranked rushing DVOA last year. They allowed the 3rd most rushing yards in the entire NFL, and they didn't do anything to make it better. Now, I think they're going to end up paying Terry, so I don't really think that situation is going to end up mattering, but they did at the time of this recording. I'm recording this on Monday the 18th, so something changes. You know why. They did start, I think they took him off the pup and they're starting to ramp him back up for practice. So he's probably going to be fine for week 1, but if he starts a little bit slow, they don't have anybody outside of him from a receiving option. They have Zach Ertz, who's good, but who's like 35. They have some young receivers that maybe have something, but not really. Without Terry, it's really, really barren. So this is not me saying that I think the Commanders are going to win 4 games or that they're going to go back to being the worst organization in sports, which they were for basically my entire lifetime before Dan Snyder sold the team. But I'll gladly fade them in week 1, and I'll gladly take their win total under. That's play number 1. Next up, the second upset pick is not quite as spicy, but I like the Panthers money line. I like for them to win straight up. They are offered at plus 135 odds at BetMGM. I'm putting a half unit on this as well. Beauty of these plus money plays, you take 2, you win half, you make money. That's kind of what we're looking for. And this is on so the previous play, the Commanders one, was more so fading them than it was backing the Giants. This one on the Panthers is a little bit of both. I think the Panthers could be decent this year. Again, I'm not saying they're going to be like a Super Bowl contender, but I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were the last 2 years. And I think the Jags, they're a huge unknown, and I'm really not a Trevor Lawrence fan, which we're going to get into. Now, the Panthers stunk last year. The biggest part of the reason why they stunk was their defense, which is probably going to be bad again, but they were like the worst defense in NFL history last year. They're not going to be that bad. They get some guys back from injury. They added some players. I think they'll be better. I'm not saying they're going to be an above average defense. They're just not going to be the worst in the NFL. And I think Bryce Young might not be that bad. He sucked when he started the year. He got benched. When he came back, their offense wasn't that bad, and they scored a decent amount. Again, this isn't me saying they're going to be like the Ravens or Bills offense, but they're going to be an above average offense and better than what you saw if you look at the entire season's results of last year. Again, he got benched after a horrific 2 weeks. You look, his last 8 games, his last 6 games were not that bad. From week 12 to week 18, 14th ranked EPA per play in the entire NFL. That's expected points added if you're not familiar. As an offense, the Panthers had the 7th highest EPA per play, again, from week 12 to week 18. 11th ranked EPA per dropback. A lot of nerd stats, but second lowest turnover-worthy throw rate. Led the NFL in hero throw rate, which is basically a stat determined by fantasy points, trying to determine the value and efficiency of high leverage throws. Number 1 in throw hero rate. A lot of nerd stats. Some of that might be just noise. Some of that might matter. But this is all to say that Bryce Young was not that bad, and the Panthers' offense was not that bad. And you look, he did that last year with a better O-line than you would have thought. This year, PFF has them ranked as the 11th best offensive line heading in to the season. So they're projecting the offensive line to be better this year than they were last year. And they had the worst wide receiver core in the entire NFL last year, according to PFF. Now, this is kind of similar to how I feel about the defense. I'm not saying the wide receiver core is going to remind you of the Bengals or the Eagles or whatever, but it's going to be better than last year. They had the worst wide receiver core in the NFL last year. I like Teteroa McMillan a lot. I think T-Mac is going to be very good. And it might take a little bit for a rookie, and I get that this is a play for week 1, but having him there as the alpha, it just kind of puts everybody else back into place. So guys like Xavier Legette can be more of like a gadgety play that they're not relying on that much. Jalen Coker can be a red zone threat, can be like a high leverage third down guy, but nothing that they're going to need, him to be anything more than that, basically. And the running game, they had a really good run blocking offensive line. Last year, I like Chuba Hubbard. I think that they're going to continue to be a good running team as well. And then again, defensively, they're going to stink. I don't think anything other than that. What I will say is that the Jags defense also stinks, and I think that's going to end up being a wash. Like, I would not be shocked this year if the Panthers ended the year with a better defense than the Jags. Maybe like the Panthers will be 28th and the Jags will be 30th. But the Panthers had the worst defense in the NFL last year, 100%. The Jags, by most metrics, the second worst. They had the second worst defensive EPA per play, second worst defensive DVOA. They were 7th worst in success rate, so only the 7th worst. And EPA per play measures like the value of an individual play. Success rate was just like, was that play good, yes or no? So I like looking at both of those stats together. Again, I don't think that either defense is going to be good. I think it's going to be a wash. The Jags do have a pretty big major question mark, They have a pretty big question mark from a coaching staff perspective. Obviously, Liam Cohen is their head coach, completely new coaching staff. We don't know if they're going to be good or bad. That's completely unknown. What we do know, what I know, I should say, I'm not a Trevor Lawrence guy. I think that if he wasn't supposed to be the next Andrew Luck, the next Peyton Manning, if he wasn't such a highly rated draft prospect, I think people would be a lot harder on him. I think Bryce Young is going to have a better year this year than Trevor Lawrence. If you look, the Jags last year, the games in which Trevor Lawrence played last year was worse than Bryce Young the second half of last year. So I get that's like, Jags year in which their head coach got fired and he didn't play. Trevor Lawrence didn't play the entire year. Whereas I'm selectively looking at a better stretch of games for Bryce Young. So I'm not saying that stat is perfect. What I am saying is that if you look at the way Bryce Young played after he got benched, and you compare that to the entire season of Trevor Lawrence, as my dogs say hello, Bryce Young had a better. Bryce Young's stats were better. That's all I'm trying to say here. So the Jags have a bad offensive line, 26th ranked offensive line heading into the year. Their wide receiver core might be good. I'll give them that. Brian Thomas Jr. is an absolute stud. Travis Hunter, probably going to be a stud. We don't know what level of stud he's going to be and how much he's going to play on offense, but their offensive line is going to stink. So yeah, give me the Panthers to win week 1. I think they're going to be better than people think. I'll take them at plus money. And that's all we got. So 2 plus money plays for a half unit each. We win one of these. We make some money. Let's hope that happens. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video, comment, subscribe. Going to have a ton of NFL stuff on this channel before the season, into the season. It's going to be a great year, hopefully. Make sure to bet responsibly and have a good one.